guys, welcome back! 33 years ago there was this little thing that revolutionized the home computer business. People were accustomed with black and white graphics, and the ZX Spectrum came to the rescue with its rainbow motif. Let's take a quick look to its origins and point out my 26 favorite games on the system, from this early model to the later ones. On the 23rd of April of 1982, Sinclair Research launched into the market a machine that came to be my very first experience with a computer. It was highly affordable compared to the other monsters that were around by that time, and that was a huge advantage for families that wanted to get into the IT world without having to sell their houses or anything like that. Back then it was like selling a car to buy gasoline. So it became one of the first mainstream audience home computers in Europe, mainly in the UK and Portugal. In fact, Timex Portugal made some official clones of the ZX Spectrum to be sold in the United States, a result of a Sinclair and Timex joint venture. Unfortunately, programs and video games stored in audio cassettes just wasn't what that particular market was looking for. This 8-bit computer was so easy to program that hundreds of young kids on their own bedrooms dedicated their free time not only playing games but also making them. That's how many classics like Manic Miner came to be. So, all the success of the ZX Spectrum came from the games that these young kids, ranging between 14 and 18 years old, made at home, trying to replicate the ones they saw at the arcades. And to get some acknowledgement from this flourishing community, tapes with their games rapid and massively started being duplicated and passed through in schoolyards and even sent by mail across all Europe. There were even radio shows that, at a specific time of day, mostly at night, would broadcast computer programs and simple and basic games that the listeners could simply record with a pretty standard tape recorder. It was the case with the Datorama show on Bristol's Radio West that started to transmit computer data by around July of 1983 after its clearance from the Broadcasting Authority. Many others followed all over Europe. Believe it or not, piracy was the main responsible for the massive and enormous success of the ZX Spectrum, and these early years were crucial for its establishment as leader of the home computer market in the old continent. I have many fond memories of those amazing and memorable times when, in Portugal, the only source for news and novelties were the scarce British and Spanish magazines that started to arrive after the Spectrum boom across all Europe, and as well a 5-minute per week TV show about video games hosted by Paul Dimas, a kind of YouTuber from those glory days that, with his passion and enthusiasm, contaminated all of us. I blame him for making me love so much video games and all things related to it. Clive Sinclair, the brain behind these machines, received a few years back a knighthood from the Queen herself for his services to British industry. The ZX Spectrum led to a huge explosion of newborn companies that produced software and hardware for it, and it is seen as the machine that launched the IT industry not only in the UK but all over Europe. With this in mind and focusing on the entertaining aspect of the ZX Spectrum, let's take a look at my personal 26 favorite titles that have provided so many hours of fun, mostly just waiting for the games to load.
Number 26.
This was the most enjoyable multiplayer game I've ever experienced on the ZX Spectrum. And it came bundled on a cover tape with issue 57 of your Sinclair magazine from September of 1990. This was how I managed to play it. Until then, I wasn't aware of the existence of such an awesome game. Originally released in 1985, Chaos is a magical combat strategy turn-based game up to 8 wizards with an awesome number of about 50 animated spells. Even if you're not familiar with Dungeons & Dragons style of gameplay, you'll love this game. And those buzzes and beeps sound really good and fits the action quite well.
Number 25.
Now, here's a title from 1983 made for the ZX Spectrum 16K and still is one of the most addictive games from the huge Spectrum library. Jetpack was the first game by Ultimate Play the Game that was later known as Rare and is part of the recently released Rare Replay compilation for the Xbox One. Our mission is simple. We must assemble our spaceship, fill it up with fuel, and take off to the next planet. Obviously, the difficulty to complete these apparent simple tasks will increase from one planet to another, but the level of addictiveness will also be furious. It was even considered Game of the Year 1983 by Computer and Video Games magazine.
Number 24.
You're obviously familiar with the first Die Hard movie, right? And you probably have heard the name Chuck Norris. Well, mix these two and you'll have Joe Blade 3. So this time around we need to rescue some hostages from this building and, by collecting lift passes, we'll be granted access to higher floors. There's also mini puzzles every so often that allows us to access security rooms. Curiously, the instructions for a Commodore 64 version was included on the inlay of the ZX Spectrum game, but that version was never released.
Number 23.
I was a huge fan of Tintin's adventures back then, and Tintin Destination Moon was my favorite. When in 1989 I realized that Infogrames published a video game based on my favorite Tintin adventure, I just bought it the minute it became available, not knowing if it was any good. Fortunately, as a fan, I wasn't disappointed. The main objective is to land on the moon, but that task isn't as simple as it may sound. If you're familiar with the comic books and animated series on which the game is based, you know that there's enemies within the rocket that will try to prevent that objective. I agree that the game is simple and fairly short to successfully complete, but it's a huge nostalgia rush for all fans of this comic character.
Number 22.
In this 1991 video game by Ocean Software, we play as Doug. Or is it Hauser? Never mind, Total Recall is based on one of my favorite movies of all time. Curiously, this wasn't the original version of the game. It was being developed by another team inside Ocean Software, but when they've realized that the 1990 Christmas deadline wasn't gonna be met, it was assigned to a new team to produce a totally new game from scratch, which was done in just 2 weeks. Were they inspired by this scene?
2 weeks! 2 weeks!
The intro music by Jonathan Dunn is just gorgeous and it almost got into my favorite intro tunes episode number 35.
Number 21.
From the minute I saw the very first Indiana Jones movie, I realized how much I love adventure and exploration. And Viaje ao Centro de la Tierra, or in English, Journey to the Center of the Earth, was just that, adventure and exploration. And I simply loved to play it at night in complete darkness. Developed by Spanish Toposoft and released in 1989, it is based on the best-selling book by French novelist Jules Verne, and it takes us to these mystical and dangerous places where we control at a time 3 characters: Professor Lindenbrook, his daughter and his nephew Axel. The three embark on this huge adventure filled with puzzles, dead ends, and nasty and deadly creatures.
Number 20.
Blowing stuff up was an extremely popular thing in mid to late 80s with so many one-man army action movies. Cabal is a 1988 arcade original title by TED Corporation that was ported by Ocean Software for the 8-bit home computers, in where we must destroy 5 enemy military bases, each one with 4 different areas. And believe me, it is so awesome to watch those buildings being slowly brought to the ground. Cabal won the award for Best Advert of the Year by readers of Crash magazine, and it really looks awesome. I agree.
Number 19.
Another arcade original title and another license grabbed by Ocean Software. This time around it's no more nor less the follow-up to the amazing Bubble Bobble. In fact, it is also known as the story of Bubble Bobble 2. Now in their human form, Bub and Bob went for some relaxing vacations on the Rainbow Islands, but the main villain from the first game is back and a bit angry. So he kidnaps the inhabitants of the islands, and our heroes are once again requested to stop the madness. The ZX Spectrum version of Rainbow Islands is an astonishing accomplishment with its excellently detailed and colorful cartoon-style graphics and this well-known tune playing in the background.
Number 18.
Another one-man army kind of game, influenced by action movies from the 80s like Commando and First Blood Part 2, in which we simply need to eliminate everyone in sight with our submachine gun and grenades in this vertically scrolling run-and-gun arcade title. The original game was developed by Capcom, and the home computer versions were extremely well ported by Elite Systems back in 1985. I'm not sure if there's a 128K version of this game, cause the 128K machines appeared prior to Commando. This one really misses that awesome tune from the arcade cabinet that Rob Hubert masterfully and geniusly converted overnight for the Commodore 64.
Number 17.
One of the most entertaining Spanish games I've ever played, and apparently was inspired by this 1980 arcade game entitled Rally X, which I never had a chance to try, cause at that time I was just 5 years old and didn't know what an arcade cabinet was all about, and these type of things were quite uncommon back then. So in 1988, Toposoft developed this arcade driving and puzzle game in where we control a buggy trying to collect 6 pieces in the form of question marks, unveiling an image of this vehicle on the bottom left of the screen. But be careful, cause behind those question marks other surprises can be unleashed. And besides a lot other hazards, be aware of mines and oil that can destroy and make you lose the control over your vehicle. Highly addictive.
Number 16.
For every single system I own, I have a favorite pinball game. On the ZX Spectrum, it's Time Scanner from 1989, developed by Spidersoft and based on the arcade original game from Sega. There's 4 different awesome tables and each one is made up of 2 screens. When the ball hits the bottom of the table, the screen freezes and scrolls down, and vice versa. This feature was something quite new back in 1989, and apart from that and from the already mentioned amazing tables, the background music and sound effects are simply amazing and faithful to the original from the arcade cabinet.
Number 15.
Another great movie adaptation from the guys at Ocean Software, and it's a 128K version only. This meant great graphics, sound and awesome music, right? Not really. I mean, the intro music is one of my favorites, but I can't understand why they didn't create some tunes for each of the only 2 missions available. Only 2 tunes, guys! The most probable reason that I can think of is that they've concluded the game even before the premiere of the movie and they just wanted the game to be in stores at the same time. Even so, the game is highly playable and addictive, and this type of sneaky and kind of early stealth type of games really attracted me. If you've watched the movie, you'll be familiarized with the missions that are loaded separately, and you can play whichever you want without finishing the other. So the first one is a mix of strategy, combat and platform game, and the second is a narc type of thing, if you remember that highly controversial one from the arcades.
Number 14.
Zona Zero, or in English Zero Zone, is a highly addictive Tron and Snake type of game that got me hooked for too much time. Again, Toposoft, the Spanish developer that was born inside the publisher Ares Software and analyzed in detail on Pixel Things episode 49, delighted the fans with one more awesome product. The goal is simple: be the last survivor in each and every level. And believe me, you won't quit easily, cause this game, despite its simplicity, is really addictive and with a catchy tune that will prevail in your mind for many years. Try it online on Toposoft's own website. They've got their greatest hits ready for you to play.
Number 13.
How awesome is this distortion guitar tune? Yeah, it's awesome, but kind of repetitive. Just forget about it and let's focus on the game itself. Set in the 20th century New York City, this action and puzzle adventure title, initially published by System 3 Software in 1988 for all home computers, has the most beautiful isometric graphics ever seen on a Spectrum game. And it can be sometimes really frustrating with some highly complicated puzzles to solve, but with some perseverance we will triumph and defeat the old and again main villain, Kunitoki. There was a limited edition of Last Ninja 2 that inside the box offered also a ninja mask and a soft plastic shuriken. Unfortunately, never got my hands on one of those.
Ocean Software presents RoboCop, part man, part machine, all computer game. You've seen the Smash movie, played the all-action coin-op, now experience the thrills on your home computer. As RoboCop, you blast through the many levels of the underworld in the pursuit of justice. Scrolling shoot-'em-up action. You've got to be tough, ruthless and lethal. You've got to be RoboCop.
Number 12.
What an amazing movie it is, and a superb adaptation from, again, Ocean Software. They made a ton of money with this game, and the fee that they had to pay for the license was insignificant. Another fun fact is that the arcade game from Data East was licensed from the home computer version that Ocean Software was already developing since the script stage of the movie itself. That's why the arcade cabinet mentions Ocean Software and has its logo stamped on it. Quite uncommon back then. The ZX Spectrum game was one of the best-selling of all time and was number 1 for over a year, even staying on the top 5 of the charts from April of '89 till February of '91. And the 128K version of the game is the way to go, cause all levels are loaded at this one time and has awesome music from Jonathan Dunn that revealed so popular that even Ariston used the Game Boy version on its On and On advert.
On and on and on and Ariston and on
Number 11.
Another superb adventure game that we cannot expect what will happen after our next step. We'll probably die. The game is filled with devious puzzles and nasty booby traps, and that's what makes this game so special. Already reviewed on my channel, I advise you to check it out for the complete story around the development of this amazing 89 platform adventure game from a company that would later create also the Tomb Raider franchise.
Number 10.
The minute I saw this game at one of my local arcade saloons, I was immediately glued to the screen, mesmerized with that so much action chasing down these criminals and ramming their cars a number of times, forcing them to stop. Believe me, that was so freaking intense. And while playing, I could feel the pressure and the support from all other guys waiting in line to play Chase HQ. Thinking of this, I believe that they just wanted me to fail so that they could play. So the arcade conversion was made in 1989 by Ocean Software for all home computers of the time, and amazingly, the ZX Spectrum and Amstrad CPC were considered the best versions, attaining high scores and reaching the top of the charts.
Number 9.
The ability to shoot on every direction possible was one of the greatest features of Midnight Resistance. At the arcades, this game was seen as another shoot 'em up among a lot others that were around. However, along with its amazing soundtrack that is my favorite on the Mega Drive Genesis, this Data-East original arcade title from 1989 was masterfully ported to the ZX Spectrum, attaining high scores and being praised for its high-detailed sprites and backgrounds. Despite its weak plot, the 9 levels of the game are packed with non-stop action, where you just want to rest till you've managed to kill all the bad guys. And as the game progresses, more and more enemies will run at you, trying to stop your goal of rescuing your kidnapped family.
Number 8.
Mythology is another theme that I was always curious about, and when I first saw the advert for Myth, I just thought, this one has my name written all over it. Myth History in the Making was originally programmed in 1989 by System 3 Software for the ZX Spectrum and Commodore 64, and has a little different story from the 16-bit Amiga version that came a few years later. So in this 2D platform game, we'll not only be fighting against all kinds of creatures on these mythological places that we could only read and dream about, but also solving some clever and ingenious puzzles. If you're willing to know more about this amazing title, check my episode dedicated to the 16-bit Amiga version of Myth.
Number 7.
Inspired by the 1963 blockbuster movie with the same name, The Great Escape was my first experience with a stealth type of game. Set in a one and only level or map, it is a truly remarkable accomplishment on the ZX Spectrum 48K back in 1986. We play as an English POW trying to escape a German camp during the Second World War. If you've watched the movie, you know what to expect, and Denton Designs just perfectly captured that ambience and tense atmosphere that surrounds that huge isometric 3D space where the action takes place. I invite you all to watch Pixel Things episode 25, where The Great Escape is reviewed in detail.
Number 6.
This is simply the most absorbing video game about the Dakar. Be advised, not reading correctly the road book and messing around with the partial kilometer counter will certainly get you lost on these immense mazes that are randomly generated every time you start the game. For 1988, Paris-Dakar from Made in Spain was something completely new and groundbreaking, and there's only two options for everyone that tries this game: love it or hate it. As a huge fan of the greatest off-road event on earth, I was immediately addicted to it, and this is one of those games that you'll need at least 3 hours to reach the checkered flag in Dakar Beach. I've made an episode dedicated to Dakar-related games, and you can enjoy my full experience with Paris-Dakar just by checking that one out.
Number 5.
Continuing on the racing genre, Enduro Racer was a very successful port published by Activision in 1987 from Sega's arcade original cabinet from a year before. The cabinet had these handlebars that, when pulled towards the player, the bike performed a wheelie. This maneuver was also ported to the home computer game, and doing it just before a jump, we will travel through the air a lot longer, avoiding all the rocks and other hazards that can be concealed by the jump itself. When we reach the second level, there's also annoying desert vehicles that just try to block our path. From this point forward, the race is no longer an enduro race. It resembles a desert type of race, just like the Dakar. Back then I used to organize some championships and invite a bunch of friends just to see who could go the farthest.
Number 4.
Ever wanted to play a character with only his boxer shorts on? Well, that game is Ghouls 'n Ghosts. You'll spend more time on your underwear rather than with your shining armor. Ghouls 'n Ghosts was another successful conversion from an arcade title by Capcom. This time around, US Gold was a publisher and the home computer versions were developed by Software Creations in 1989, and these are truly faithful to the original. So, we start in this graveyard, and the most annoying thing is if you die, you travel all the way back to the beginning of the level. Apart from that, it is truly enjoyable to play, with plenty of comical situations, with astounding detailed graphics and superbly smooth scrolling. Despite the extreme quality of the 48K version, everyone should play the one made for the 128K machines, mainly for the smashing intro music and sound effects.
Number 3.
Irem Corporation produced in 1987 this side-scrolling shoot-'em-up arcade game, whilst the Aliens movie from 1986 and directed by James Cameron was still fresh in everyone's minds. Let's compare the artwork of the arcade cabinet to the alien creature created by Hans Rudolf Giga. Aren't they similar? The game was an instant success on the arcades, and a year later on all home computers. It is also known as being one of the most difficult games ever made. It needs a high level of strategy to be victorious against the Baido Empire. The weapon system implemented into R-Type was something completely new when the game was released, and that detachable pod is your best friend against the enemy and where all the strategy against them resides. An amazing port by Electric Dream Software of a game with the most iconic alien bosses ever created for a video game.
Number 2.
Once upon a time, there was this guy, Mervyn Escort, who decided to play around with his 16K ZX Spectrum, designing a simple computer game where we chased motorcycles night and day through these forests, avoiding trees. Simple, right? Simple and pretty damn effective. So in 1983 we had a primitive and highly enjoying form of 3D game, kind of a first-person shooter on a motorcycle. Back then, this was really mind-boggling and left everyone speechless with such a high-quality and addictive game on a 16K machine. I've already reviewed this game on my channel. It was, in fact, the very first game I've ever played on a ZX Spectrum. Check it out.
Number 1.
You've already noticed that besides video games, I'm also a huge movie fan, mostly from the 80s and 90s, and the first Batman film from Tim Burton is my favorite based on this DC Comics character. The game follows closely the events from the movie, and again, Ocean Software did an amazing job bringing the Caped Crusader to all home computers in late 80s. There's platforming action with diagonal batarang throwing, driving, puzzling and even flying. A complete package of awesome graphics, sound and, on the 128K version, superb music throughout the whole game. A nice touch was that when we finished the game, the score counter won't reset to 0. So I kept on playing it over and over till I reached the maximum score points possible. The game is that amazing, I just can't get enough of it. It's definitely my number 1. Batman the movie on the ZX Spectrum was one of my first reviews for the Pixel Things YouTube channel, and of course, you're free to check that one out. So guys, here's my top 26 video games that I most fondly recall playing on the ZX Spectrum 48 and 128K. Believe me, it was really hard to come up with such a list. Those were amazing years, the thrills of chasing the greatest hits of the arcades, the scarce information of latest releases. It was the dawn of a brand new world, and I was right there, enjoying every bit of it. Leave your comments below with your own lists of favorite games on this amazing system that revolutionized the way we look and interact with computers. So, if you've enjoyed this episode of the Pixel Thing, share, like and subscribe to be the first to grab my latest videos. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you all next week.